October 1st, 2017, bullets rain over a country music festival in Las Vegas, turning 22,000 attendees into targets. From his 32nd floor suite in the Mandalay Bay Hotel, Stephen Paddock, 64, shoots more than 1,000 rounds in 10 minutes, killing 58 and wounding more than 800. These are the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history.
Ramirez crawled out to call for help, but not before seeing the gunman go aisle to aisle looking for survivors.
Los babies lloraban y cuando lloraban los babies abajo.
He says he saw the gunman find the crying babies and shot them point blank.
November 5th, 2017, Sutherland Springs, Texas. Approximately 50 attendees are enjoying Sunday service inside the First Baptist Church when Devin Patrick Kelly, 26, burst through the doors wearing a skull-printed mask and a tactical vest packed with ammunition. Kelly randomly fires his Ruger AR-556 at everyone. His only words are, "Everybody dies, motherfuckers." This would be confirmed later by survivors and footage from the church's livestream camera. Kelly first gunned down a couple of men outside the sanctuary and then left them in the parking lot. Inside, 24 more people would be shot dead without a discernible pattern. Amongst the victims would be Crystal Holcomb, 8 months pregnant, who had tried to shield her toddler with her body before dying due to gunshot wounds. Sadly, 3 of her were shot next to her. Lula Wachinski White, 77, is also killed in the rampage. She'd later be identified as the shooter's grandmother-in-law. Stephen Williford, a 55-year-old plumber and former NRA instructor, acted swiftly before any law enforcement member arrived and ran barefoot from his nearby home, holding his AR-15 rifle when he heard the gunshots. In a later interview, he said there was no time for shoes.
"Each shot may cost someone their life."
He quickly engaged in a shootout with Kelly and struck him twice, a bullet to the leg and another to the torso, piercing his tactical vest, before the man fled in his SUV.
We chased him across the intersection and down 539 till we reached the part where he lost control and the chase was over.
A second man, Johnny Langendorf, joined Williford in a high-speed pursuit. Kelly, having already decided on his fate, made a frantic call to his father.
"I just shot up the Sutherland Springs church. I don't think I'm gonna make it."
Moments later, Kelly made a swift turn into a field near Guadalupe County and crashed his vehicle into a ditch, where he then shot himself in the head with a Glock 19 pistol. Cops found him dead at the wheel, surrounded by several weapons, including an additional Ruger SR-22, all legally purchased by Kelly, despite the many red flags that should have prevented his access to arms. Now, Kelly had a complex military and personal background. The man was discharged from the Air Force in 2014 after a court-martial found him guilty of beating his wife and his stepson, and he should have been immediately banned from firearm ownership under federal law then. But that's where the Air Force's negligence comes into play, because they kind of failed to submit his conviction to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS. Investigations into Kelly's past uncovered an alarming pattern of violence. He received a sentence in 2014 regarding misdemeanor animal cruelty in Colorado for beating his pet, a malnourished husky. Neighbors at a park in Colorado Springs saw him chasing the dog, jumping on it, and punching it 4 to 5 times with a closed fist near the head and neck area. But the offense was dismissed in 2016 after he paid restitution and fines. He'd been investigated for assault following a report of in Comal County, Texas, in 2013. But that investigation was filed after the victim stopped cooperating with the authorities. Even before leaving the Air Force, he escaped from a New Mexico psychiatric facility, in which he checked in 2012 for suicidal ideation and threats against military superiors. He was even caught sneaking firearms onto Holloman Air Force Base to carry out death threats against his chain of command. So, none of these violent episodes prevented Kelly from commercial access to the wide array of weapons he legally owned. This guy was able to purchase a Ruger AR-556 rifle used in the shooting from an Academy Sports and Outdoor store in San Antonio in 2016.
The Associated Press is reporting that the suspect is Devin Kelly, seen here on a public Facebook account next to an image of a gun posted last week.
After the shooting left 26 fatalities and 22 injuries, the legal aftermath could only focus on third-party accountability, meaning U.S. District Judge Xavier Rodriguez ruled that the Air Force was 60% liable for the shooting in July 2021 due to an inexcusable failing to report the gunner's criminal history, and would order a $230 million payout to survivors and families. But after an appeal by the Justice Department, a $144.5 million settlement was reached by April 2023. Victims weren't satisfied with that decision as they noted insulting disparities compared to payouts for previous shootings. The everlasting debate regarding gun control was reignited by the atrocious death toll. 8 members of the Holcomb family, including several children and an unborn child, the local pastor's daughter, and survivors scarred for life by this incident, like Chris Workman, paralyzed from the waist down and facing a lifetime of medical bills. Or how about several others grappling with PTSD, triggered by the sound of choppers after the airlift that evacuated the wounded.
A particularly contentious issue following the Sutherland Springs tragedy has been the fate of the church building itself.
In August 2021, after 4 years of futile political back and forth, with President Trump even dismissing the case as an isolated occurrence of mental health problems, the 400-resident town of Sutherland Springs decided to demolish the 100-year-old church to build an open-air prayer garden dedicated to the memory of the victims. The majority of the congregation members saw a constant reminder of the tragic events in the standing building. They ensued in a legal battle with survivors and victims' families, who saw the demolition as the desecration of a sacred space. But finally, in August 2024, a judge ruled in favor of the church, and the building was demolished to make way for a new healing space for this community.
This morning, the Sandy Hook Elementary School was full of kids concerned about Christmas. And then at 9:40 a.m., shots rang out.
December 14th, 2012. As morning announcements began at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, a man dressed in a black uniform shoots 11 rounds at the reinforced glass panel of the closed entrance door. This man is Adam Lanza. A silent alarm connected to the Newtown Police Department was triggered. But everything would happen too fast. The first 2 victims would be adults reacting to the first noises. Principal Dawn Hawksprung, 47, and school psychologist Mary Sherlock, 56, ran to the hallway and faced a hail of bullets. Hawksprung, however, managed to make one last heroic move that helped to save many lives. She would use the intercom to shout,
"Shooter, stay put."
Some teachers, like Caitlin Rogue Debler, reacted in seconds to keep their students safe. She barricaded her 15 first graders in the bathroom, stacking bookshelves against the door. She later recounted that she whispered to the scared kids,
"There are bad guys out there now. We need to wait for the bad guys."
Lanza went precisely after 2 other groups of first graders. He apparently went for classrooms 8 and 10 because they're closer to the entrance. Substitute teacher Lauren Russo, 30, acted quickly and hid her students in a bathroom in classroom A. But there was nothing she could do against Lanza and his AR-15. 5 minutes and 154 rounds later, behavioral therapist Rachel Davino, 29, Russo, and 14 lay dead on the floor. An anonymous kid, only identified as Child 1, in later released court documents, recounted a gruesome scene that seemed to have sprung out of a horror movie. She smeared her classmates' blood on herself and laid motionless to avoid calling the shooter's attention.
"I just kept my eyes closed and stayed still."
In classroom 10, the teacher Victoria Soto, 27, tried a different approach. After she hid her students in a closet, she tried redirecting Lanza by claiming they were in the gym. But 6 panicked at the sight of an armed man and tried to run away. Lanza shot him at close range as they screamed. Then he went back and killed Soto as she tried to shield 3 kids with her body. Amongst this chaos, a brave student by the name of Jesse Lewis shouted "Run" to his classmates and saved 9 lives before being killed himself.
The teacher's calm is matched by a storm of police activity. Word of possibly 2 shooters sparks searches of the surrounding area. Are rushed out of the school, single file, hands on shoulders, eyes squeezed shut.
First responders arrived at 9:39 a.m., but they were simply too late. Newtown police officer William Chapman later recalled hearing the final gunshots and then a terrifying silence as Adam Lanza took his own life with a Glock 20 SF 10mm pistol. The post-crime scene went into chaos. They needed ambulances, a lot of ambulances, to transport these victims to Danbury Hospital. But moving them all from a nearby firehouse where they were staged proved to be a logistical nightmare. Parents had to wait for hours as authorities transported and identified their kids. The state of the bodies was so hideous in some cases that dental records proved insufficient, and medical teams later recounted identifying children by their clothing. Autopsy reports, sealed for years and disclosed in 2020, showed that all the victims died from multiple gunshot wounds, with some of them hit 3 to 11 times. Adam Lanza began the descent to hell earlier that morning. At approximately 8:52 a.m., he shot his 52-year-old mother, Nancy, 4 times in the head while she laid sleeping in her Newtown home. The police found out that that woman was bedridden due to a recent surgery and had 13 legally owned firearms around the house. After ending his mother's life, he drove.
An obsession with mass murders, in particular the Columbine shootings.
His entire world was, I think, planning some event like this shooting.
Investigators found that he had methodically smashed his computer's hard drive with a hammer, but forensic experts recovered fragments from a spreadsheet titled "School Shootings," detailing 500 mass killings worldwide, and a 7-page story titled "The Big Book of Granny," depicting a woman who murders children. He lived like a prisoner, never leaving his bedroom, which he sealed off with black trash bags over the windows. His decor choices comprised of a few NRA certificates, a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook, and a framed newspaper article about the 2006 Amish school shooting. Anyone who knew Lanza viewed him as this weird, shy person, unable to communicate with other people or even socialize in any form. He went into this isolation spiral for at least a decade, and by 2010, he talked with his mother solely via email, even while living in the same house. In 2014, his medical records were detailed in the 2014 Office of the Child Advocate report, disclosing diagnoses of sensory integration disorder, anorexia, and severe obsessive-compulsive disorder, requiring gloves to touch doorknobs. This kid was a high school dropout, and his tutors from Newtown High School remembered him as a kid obsessed with the dancing video game Dance Dance Revolution, who wouldn't talk about anything else other than the mass shootings. All the red flags were definitely there. Peter Lanza, Adam's father, later said in this 2014 interview for The New Yorker that Adam's brain, donated to science, showed abnormalities in the frontal cortex linked to decision-making and empathy.
Shooters apparently still shooting.
But as to why 20-year-old Adam Lanza targeted the school and then killed himself, the state prosecutor said his investigation does not establish a conclusive motive.
With the shooter dead, legal repercussions targeted gun manufacturers. In 2015, families of 9 victims would sue Remington Arms, arguing that the Bushmaster Rifles marketing violated Connecticut's Unfair Trade Practices Act. They pled the company was targeting young violence-prone males through despicable ads with phrasing like, "Consider your man card reissued." They won. The families received a $73 million settlement in 2022, setting the precedent for the first time a gun manufacturer was held liable for a mass shooting. Repercussions reached legal status as Connecticut's 2013 gun control bill passed 26-10 in the Senate, banning high-capacity magazines and expanding background checks for gun purchases.
But despite Adam's issues, friends say Nancy Lanza took her son to local firing ranges and introduced him to the world of high-powered guns, including the Bushmaster AR-15 assault-style weapon he used to kill his victim.
It wasn't clear to everyone how this is going to make a difference, though Lanza's weapons were acquired legally. The building's demolition was completed in early 2014. The new Sandy Hook School, which opened in August 2016 for $50 million, was designed with input from the community, focusing on safety, healing, and a fresh start. It featured blast-resistant doors, bulletproof glass, and a design avoiding straight sight lines. They would also paint a sycamore tree to honor each victim, 20 first graders and 7 adults.
Just minutes after firing 2 fatal shots at the Virginia Tech dormitory on Monday, Cho Sung-wi returned to his own dorm room and made the final preparations to mail what appears to be a video confession.
When the time came, I did it. I had to.
April 16th, 2007, Blacksburg, Virginia, 7:15 a.m. Sung-hui Choi, 23, South Korean national who immigrated to the U.S. with his family at the age of 8, wears a maroon hoodie and carries a .22 caliber Walther P22 pistol. As he enters freshman Emily Hischler's dorm room, the first couple of fatal gunshots echo throughout West Ambler Johnston Hall as Cho claims Hischler's life. She had swiped her access card at 7:10 a.m. after being dropped off by Carl Thornhill, her boyfriend. He became an early suspect when police discovered his gun collection during questioning. Resident advisor Ryan Clark ran toward the loud bangs, only to be shot dead in the hallway. Cho then went back to the Harper Hall dorm after the first murders and proceeded to delete emails and remove his computer's hard drive. A detail later corroborated by his roommate's recollection of seeing him in boxer shorts applying acne cream at 5:30 a.m. By 9:01 a.m., Cho had mailed a 1,800-word manifesto from the Blacksburg post office. Now, this written rant is accompanied by photos of him aiming weapons and a video where he's confessing to the murders he's about to commit.
You had 100 billion chances and ways to have avoided today, but you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now, you have blood on your hands that will never wash off.
Cho executed his meticulous plan with military precision. He'd been planning it for weeks. He'd got there at 9:40 a.m. with a backpack having 19 high-capacity mags. That's around 400 rounds of ammo, and some chains and a hammer he bought at Home Depot. To prevent anyone from interrupting this plan, he chained 3 entrances shut and put padlocks on them. And then he posted a handwritten bomb threat on one door.
If you try to open this door, bombs will explode.
Some witnesses would later recount how they saw this hooded man scouting Norris Hall days earlier, chaining doors during a dry run on April 14th. Cho's first target was the classroom marked Room 206, where he killed hydrology professor G.V. Laganathan and 9 students, execution style, sparing only 4 who played dead beneath their desks. Next would be Room 207. German instructor Jamie Bishop collapsed after being shot multiple times while trying to shield the students with his body. In Room 211, where Professor Jocelyn Couture-Nowak was teaching a French course, Air Force ROTC cadet Matthew Laporte threw himself at Cho in this attempt to disarm him, but he was shot 7 times before dying. In the following chaotic minutes, 76-year-old Holocaust survivor Liviu Librescu, a Romanian-born aeronautics professor, barricaded the door of room 2004. With his body, he blocked Cho's advances just long enough to save the lives of 22 students, who managed to escape through the windows. Eyewitnesses remember him as a hero and reported him shout, "Go! I'll hold him!" Librescu was shot multiple times through the wooden door and collapsed just moments after the last student escaped. Forensics would show later that Cho fired 174 rounds in 11 minutes, reloading 17 times while alternating between his Walther P22 and a Glock 19. Before anyone could get near him, Cho put a bullet through his head. The police finally break in and find him near the corpse of Rima Samaha, an 18-year-old dancer who attended Westfield High School with Cho but never spoke to him.
Though he tried to cover his tracks by filing down the serial numbers on his guns, he obviously wanted the world to know who was responsible for the worst mass shooting in America. He began working on these materials at least 6 days beforehand.
This investigation found that Cho's descent into violence was years in the making. This guy was diagnosed with selective mutism and severe depression in middle school, and had an imaginary friend named Jelly, who, according to him, was a space-dwelling supermodel who called him Spanky. Just like we saw with Adam Lanza's case, Cho was raising red flags with each step he took. At Virginia Tech, his 2005 creative writing submissions were filled with explicit school shooting fantasies, which prompted Professor Nikki Giovanni to expel him from class. 2 female students would file complaints against him for stalking behavior, which led to a court-mandated psychiatric evaluation, in which he was deemed an imminent danger. Then the system's gonna fail us again, because a procedural loophole allows this kid to pass federal background checks. You see, at the time, Virginia only reported involuntary inpatient commitments to the NICS, the database the weapons vendors must check before you sell a gun, so Cho's outpatient order was never submitted to NICS. Even though the court had explicitly prohibited Cho from purchasing guns as part of his treatment order, this restriction really only existed on dusty office paper. So when he bought his Glock 19 and Walther P22 in 2007, gun store clerks did their job and ran his name through NICS. But they receive a proceed response because the system lacked any records regarding his compromised mental health. So he had the guns literally offered to him daily. J&D Pawnbrokers, the store that sold him the Walther P22, was visible from his dorm window. And as if things weren't bad enough, he was also able to get bulk orders of ammunition magazines from eBay and booked practice sessions at Roanoke's PSS range. Some people even saw him there as he filmed himself in the same rented Kia van he later used for his manifesto recordings.
The first email didn't go out until 2 hours after Sung-Wee Cho killed 2 students in a dorm. By then, he was already chaining the doors to a building where he then killed 30 more students and faculty.
Now, the university's delayed alert system would also play a pivotal role in this tragedy. A 9:26 a.m. email about the dorm shootings and a 9:50 a.m. warning of an active shooter violated Clary Act protocols and resulted in a $32,500 federal fine in 2014. Families of Aaron Peterson and Julia Pride, 2 Norris Hall victims, rejected Virginia's $11 million settlement to pursue a wrongful death lawsuit, winning a $4 million jury verdict, later overturned by the state Supreme Court after ruling that the university could not have reasonably anticipated Cho's second attack after initially classifying the dormitory killings as an isolated domestic dispute. The Virginia Tech shooting resulted in a final death toll of 32 individuals, including the perpetrator, Sung-Wee Cho. Additionally, he injured 17 people, while 6 others got their injuries from jumping out of a window to escape.
Mateen then leaves the building, but returns less than 10 minutes later and almost immediately opens fire into the main part of the club with his semi-automatic rifle.
June 12, 2016, Orlando, Florida, 2 a.m. Loud music fills the night at Pulse, a popular LGBTQ+ venue packed with a crowd of mostly Latino and Puerto Rican partygoers for that vibrant Latin night. Suddenly, people hear loud sounds of gunfire over the music, and people see an attacker, Omar Mateen, 29-year-old security guard, entering the club armed with a semi-auto rifle and a Glock, and just starts opening fire. Mateen bypassed an off-duty police officer working security outside the club and made his way inside through the southern entrance. The attack began without warning, and the patrons initially mistook that gunfire for some kind of celebration, fireworks or part of the music, but panic quickly spread as everyone understood exactly what was happening. Witnesses saw Mateen moving methodically through the club, firing randomly into the crowd. Some reported that he shot at individuals attempting to flee. People tried to hide anywhere they could. The bouncer, a Marine Corvette, managed to unlatch a door, allowing approximately 70 people to escape.
As they search inside for Mateen, they are seen stepping over victims.
Yes, get outside, get outside!
And evacuating as many who are still alive as possible.
Cops arrive on scene and engage in sporadic gunfire, but he'd already had fired around 200 rounds. Surrounded by cops now, the gunman retreated into the bathroom, where he held hostages for nearly 3 hours and made several calls to 911, pledging allegiance to ISIS and expressing anger over U.S. military action in the Middle East. The tensions rose when he lied about having explosives and snipers positioned outside the club, and authorities couldn't really know if he was bluffing or not. Minutes after 5 a.m., SWAT breaches the building by driving an armored vehicle right through the exterior. Mateen tried to face him and was killed in a shootout at 5:14. Mateen was shot 8 times as he tried to face him in a shootout, dead at 5:14 a.m. This attack was sick and an absolute tragedy, becoming the most prolific mass shooting in U.S. history at that time. 49 people dead and 43 wounded.
Moments later, we learn it's a controlled explosion set off by police to distract the gunman. An armored vehicle smashes through a wall of the club, and SWAT officers swarm in behind.
Even today, this shooting remains the worst attack on LGBTQ+ individuals in American history, as many of these victims were just people out celebrating their Pride Month. Over 90% of those killed were of Hispanic descent, born in New York to Afghan parents. Mateen had been investigated by the FBI twice before for potential ties to terrorism, but wasn't deemed a threat at the time, as he didn't seem to have any connections to those kind of organizations. Now, there was no definitive answer for the atrocious act, and some had speculated that his actions were driven by internalized homophobia and other psychological aspects like a history of domestic violence and erratic behavior that, in retrospect, could be understood as warning signs.
At 2:07, roughly 6 minutes after he started shooting, police entered the building with guns drawn.
There was also some criticism regarding the response from law enforcement. The public felt that officers could have acted more swiftly to end this standoff and save more lives. However, a later investigation confirmed that none of the bullets fired by police caused any injuries or fatalities among civilians. And according to law enforcement, there wasn't much they could have done differently in such a complex situation. As it happens every few years, the Pulse nightclub shooting rekindles the debates over gun control in America. Mateen didn't really have any problems legally purchasing those firearms, despite previous FBI investigations and even some reports of his troubling behavior coming from coworkers and acquaintances. People started arguing about the necessity of imposing stricter regulations and banning civilians from purchasing assault weapons. But those Second Amendment enthusiasts, believed the tragedy was being used as a political tool.
Noor Salman, the widow of the Orlando nightclub shooter, is currently on trial on federal terrorism charges for her alleged role in the massacre. 49 people were killed when Omar Mateen opened fire in June of 2016.
After the attack, Mateen's wife, Noor Salman, was going to be prosecuted as an accomplice and was also facing charges of obstructing justice, but the evidence against her was circumstantial and insufficient. She was ultimately acquitted in March 2018. The club has remained closed to the public since the 2016 attack, and the site has been transformed into this memorial by the One Pulse Foundation. Each year on June 12th, families, survivors, and supporters gather to honor the victim's memory. October 1st, 2017. It's the final night at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas, Nevada. There are thousands of people out here having a good time on open ground across the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. Singer Jason Aldean was performing on stage, But at 10:05 p.m., a rapid succession of gunfire would interrupt the concert, confusing everyone. When they finally understood what was going on, they started screaming and ran for cover. Nobody knew where the bullets were coming from, and little did they know that the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history is just beginning. From a strategically chosen location on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, Stephen Paddock, 64, meticulously executes this unbelievable attack. The man had checked into a suite days earlier and stocked it with an absurd amount of weapons and ammunition. To achieve his stocking purposes without being detected, the man made several trips between the Mandalay Bay and his home in Mesquite, Nevada, with some occasional stops at the Ogden, an apartment complex in between. He would go and come carrying more and more suitcases on each trip and behaving like a completely normal person. Every movement he made inside the hotel was caught on camera, but he didn't raise any alarms. However, he was building an arsenal in his suite and taking the occasional free time to buy additional weapons and visit a shooting range. He also managed to build a fortress with gun stands, 23 assorted guns and rifles, and thousands of rounds of ammunition. He thought about every little detail of this plan and would even set up a rudimentary CCTV system to have some surveillance available during the attack.
2 days later, Paddock would use this and one other service card to create a surveillance ring during his attack.
The attack lasted for approximately 15 minutes. However, it was like an eternal nightmare for the people being shot at. From 10:05 to 10:15 p.m., Paddock fired more than 1,000 rounds into this terrified crowd in 12 distinct bursts. He shot randomly, killing 58 people instantly and wounding over 800 others. 2 other victims would later be considered homicides after they died from their injuries in the following years, so the official death toll went up to 60. When the first bullets started spraying out, people ignored it. They were short bursts, resembling the crackling noise of firecrackers. Many videos show the attendees saying it was just fireworks or technical malfunctions, but then the following bursts were louder and clearer. They lasted longer too. The bodies began to fall, and panic spread amongst the terrorized concert-goers. Everybody either sprung into action or tried to take cover. Some people shielded others with their bodies. First responders used these makeshift stretchers to carry the wounded. Nobody seemed to understand the source of the gunfire, not even the police. Alarms sounded in all surrounding buildings, and there was this idea of multiple shooters on site. But there was only Paddock. Inside Mandalay Bay, hotel security guard Jesus Campos was sent to investigate an open door alert on the 32nd floor shortly before 10 p.m. He discovers an L-shaped bracket barricading the door just before Paddock fired at him through his suite door, striking him in the leg. Injured, Campos alerts the hotel staff and directs the cops straight to that suite. 10:17 p.m. The bullet rain over the people in the street had stopped. Officers reached the 32nd floor and began clearing rooms and evacuating guests. It wasn't until 11:20, over an hour after the first gunshots, that police breached the door using explosives. They didn't meet any resistance. As in many other mass shooting scenarios, the coward had decided to end his life.
Control 590K, I have a team of 4. We're going to make entry to the shark. We need to make a contact to the suspect, see if we can get up to him.
169, we're doing that right now. 32nd floor.
This guy left no manifesto, no side note, no clear explanation for his actions. Only confusion. No one, not even his brother, could understand why he did this. The investigation found evidence of planning so methodical it was almost unbelievable. The rigged surveillance camera to monitor the hallway, several detailed notes calculating the bullet trajectories, the intricate system to get 24 weapons into the suite, and financial records revealing a significant wealth turned into losses by gambling. But there was nothing more. Paddock had no ties to extremist groups, nor a history of violence, not even a personal vendetta. Nothing. With Paddock dead, the legal onslaught went for the corporations. Lawsuits were filed against MGM Resorts International, owner of the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino, gun manufacturers and distributors whose products were used in the attack. Victims argued that gun manufacturers like Colt enabled mass shootings by designing firearms easily modified with bump stocks, devices allowing semi-automatic rifles to mimic fully automatic fire.
The officers are pinned down by automatic gunfire. Officer Brady Cook is shot.
There was a small victory for gun control advocates on December 18, 2018, when the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or ATF, issued a final rule classifying bump stocks as machine guns under the National Firearms Act, or NFA. However, in December 2021, the Nevada Supreme Court ruled that gun makers could not be held liable under state law unless their products contained manufacturing defects. As of 2025, the Las Vegas shooting keeps its spot as the deadliest in U.S. history. Looks like we'll never get to know the root of this evil, as it died with Paddock in Suite 32-135.
You know, there's nothing but love for those two guys.
Yeah, for sure. I'm speechless. I don't know what words to say to them, that I'm grateful. They saved my life.
In the days after the attack, the dark portrait of the man at the center of the massacre came into focus. The shooter, 64-year-old Stephen Paddock, a retired accountant and real estate investor, at one point a net worth of just over $2 million. But the scale and scope of what he did and how he did it remained a mystery.